On to the latest on the Russia-Ukraine war now. The front lines of eastern Ukraine witnessing intense fighting. Russia claims it has encircled Kyiv's elite brigades, warning them to surrender or face annihilation. Ukrainian soldiers, in fact, confess on camera there is a lack of manpower on the front lines. A war of nerves, strategy, and survival is unfolding. Take a look at this report for more.
The battle-scarred plains of Donbass are on the brink again. Russia says Ukrainian forces trapped in Pokrovsk and Kupiansk have just two choices: lay down arms or perish. It's the most direct warning since the siege of Bakhmut, and Moscow insists that the noose is tightening. The message from Russian commanders is cold, clinical, echoing across battered fields and ruined towns. Lay down arms and live, resist and die. Russian positions tighten relentlessly. Drones circle overhead, battering Ukrainian fortifications. Along muddy roads, columns of tanks punch deeper. Precision artillery rains down, slicing through shattered warehouses and empty apartment blocks. As buildings change hands in chaotic fighting in Ukraine's eastern stronghold of Pokrovsk, defending forces demand that more soldiers are needed to prevent the enemy infiltrating further.
They accumulated assault groups. They are seeping through our infantry positions because, as I said before, there is a critical shortage of infantry. They seeped through and they entered. I'm telling you, 5 men are on the way, but only 1 makes it. So far, it's difficult, not critical yet, but it's difficult. It will be more difficult if there is a greater accumulation of Russian military personnel and if it drags on and turns into street battles in the winter.
In Kyiv, a wall of denial. Ukraine's defense ministry insists that troops are holding fast, that Russian lines aren't as strong as Moscow boasts. Ukrainian forces are also continuing to target deep inside Russia. In the latest attack, Kyiv claims it launched a massive drone strike on Russia's southern city of Volgograd. Volgograd, more than 400 kilometers from the fighting in eastern Ukraine, is an industrial hub, home to gas and petroleum refining plants. Ukraine has stepped up its drone attacks deep behind the front lines, targeting Russia's energy sector. But fatal strikes so far from the border are still relatively rare. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Are Donald Trump and Xi Jinping aiming to build their own Mount Rushmores, carved from yes men? During a meeting with Republican senators at a White House breakfast, Donald Trump said he wanted his own cabinet to behave like China. Listen to this first.
And he's got about 6 people on each side, and every one of those people was standing like this. They were at attention. And I made a comment to one of them, and I got no response. I said, "Are you going to answer me?" I got no response. And President Xi didn't let him have any. So if there's any question, I said, I want my cabinet to behave like that. That's the way. I'm demanding that I want them sitting up like that, Tim, just nice and straight. I never saw posture like that. I've never seen men so scared in their lives.
And reacting to Trump's narrative, a Chinese official put out a video that showed a Chinese minister, the Assistant Minister of Foreign Affairs, correcting Xi Jinping during a meeting with the South Korean president when the Chinese president allegedly incorrectly introduced the presents given to the South Korean leader.
婚宴就是安徽的宴，这个宴就是婚宴。
宴台，这个宴台是广东的。
啊，这是端宴。
这个是墨是安徽的。
这是端宴。徽墨端宴。墨就是这个。
And now here's the gist. despite what Trump claims, he also seems to be surrounded by yes men. Just to put this simply, if you are not a yes man, you are gone from Trump's circle. And there have been plenty of instances, by the way, both during his current term and also his first term, whether it was Trump's cabinet gathering this August or back in June 2017 at the first formal gathering of Trump's most senior officials at the White House during his first term. One after another, cabinet members could be seen showering Trump with praise. And this praise is not just limited to the United States. Even outside America, it is understood that flattery is the currency when it comes to dealing with Trump. Back in June, during the NATO summit, Trump got a new nickname from the NATO Secretary General, remember, the daddy, quote unquote. Trump at the time was speaking at the NATO summit in reference to the Iran and Israel war. Listen to this.
You know, you need them. They're not going to be fighting each other. They've had it. They've had a big fight, like two kids in a schoolyard. You know, they fight like hell. You can't stop them. Let them fight for about 2-3 minutes, then it's easy to stop them.
And then Daddy has to sometimes use strong language to get them.
And just last month, the Israeli Prime Minister described Trump as the greatest friend Israel has ever had in the White House.
Donald Trump is the greatest friend that the state of Israel has ever had in the White House.
So as Trump wants to have his own cabinet like China, it appears that Trump perhaps already has the same, not just domestically, but also in the way things have panned out internationally, with the big notable difference being Xi Jinping operates in a communist regime, of course, Trump in the world's oldest democracy. Our next story is about deepfakes, a major concern given how AI is increasingly making its presence felt all around us. And in case you're not aware, deepfakes basically use AI to try and manipulate or generate content to make it appear authentic. Basically, artificial intelligence generated images, videos, audio of real people or events that are highly realistic. They appear to look real, but they are not. They are a dangerous tool for spreading misinformation. Just imagine having your face placed on someone else's, and that person could be doing just about anything. Sounds scary, right? Well, they have become not only easier to make worldwide, but also look or sound exponentially more realistic. And now Denmark is seeking to protect ordinary citizens as well as performers and artists who might have their appearance or voice imitated and shared without their permission. Basically, a bill that is expected to pass early next year would change copyright law reportedly by imposing a ban on the sharing of deepfakes to protect citizens' personal characteristics like their appearance or voice from being imitated and shared online without their consent. To mention some of the details, if enacted, Danish citizens reportedly would get the copyright over their own likeness. In theory, they then would be able to demand that online platforms take down content shared without their permission. The law would still allow for parodies and satire reportedly, though it's unclear how that will be determined. Experts and officials reportedly say the Danish legislation would be among the most extensive steps yet taken by a government to combat misinformation through deepfakes. The fact is that there is rising concern over deepfakes. Technology is evolving fast, and there is a need to catch up and counter the menace of deepfakes. Former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan has launched his fiercest attack yet on Pakistan's army chief Asim Munir. In a fiery post from behind the bars, Khan called him, quoting, the most tyrannical dictator in Pakistan's history, and went as far as labeling him, quote unquote, mentally unstable, further claiming that in his lust for power, Munir is capable of doing anything. Now, the timing of that statement is crucial. It comes as the Shehbaz Sharif government prepares to table the 27th constitutional amendment, a proposal that many see as a blatant attempt to consolidate military control for Asim Munir. That amendment will alter Article 243, which basically defines the command of the armed forces. And the changes would grant constitutional recognition to the rank of Field Marshal, conferred to him by the Shehbaz Sharif-led government back in May, remember, effectively securing Asim Munir an extended term and expanding his authority deep into civilian governance. The opposition has slammed the proposed amendment as an assault on provincial autonomy. Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Chief Minister, a close ally of Imran Khan, has accused the federal government of undermining the 18th Amendment, which guaranteed provinces greater control over their own affairs. Afridi called the move a power grab disguised as reform and vowed that the PTI would resist any attempt to weaken provincial rights. Senior leader of the ruling party, Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, Ikhtiar Wali Khan, defended the 27th Amendment, stating, modern warfare demands new governance structures. He claimed wars are no longer fought on battlefields, but through media and cyberspace, suggesting that centralizing power could help Pakistan tackle digital and psychological warfare. But behind that rhetoric lies a deeper question. Is Pakistan's democracy being blatantly replaced not just by military dominance, but also in the form of autocracy in the hands of Asim Munir? And then it brings us to the other question. Is Asim Munir mentally unstable, as Imran Khan claims? Well, based on his own actions, there are a lot of question marks that come up. Munir, remember, has already drawn criticism for promoting an overtly ideological vision. Back in April, during a speech invoking the two-nation theory, he told Pakistanis to remind their children that Muslims and Hindus, in his words, are fundamentally different, be it in religion, customs, or ambitions. His comments raised eyebrows for pushing a hardline narrative that sidelined the religious minorities. In the same speech, Asim Munir vowed to crush insurgents in Balochistan, promising to, quote-unquote, beat the hell out of terrorists from 1,500 terrorists belonging to groups like the BLA, BLF and BRA. Yet, just this week, the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister contradicted him in the Parliament, admitting that 35,000 to 40,000 Taliban fighters who once fled have returned, quote-unquote. Such conversations are not simply limited to just the Pakistani establishment. They are also surfacing across social media. Similar to Imran Khan, Pakistanis are calling Munir, quote-unquote, mentally unstable in online posts, further accusing him of oppressing Pashtuns in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa under the pretext of the TTP. So as Pakistan's parliament braces for a heated showdown over the 27th Amendment, one thing is clear as of now. Imran Khan's accusations, Asim Munir's growing influence and the government's constitutional maneuvering have reignited that age-old debate. Is Pakistan still a democracy, or has power finally shifted once and for all into military hands? And like in cases in the past, under just one person. And shifting focus now to a question. Is America looking for fresh conflict in Africa? And we are asking that because Donald Trump took fresh aim at Africa's two biggest economies, Nigeria and South Africa. While he questioned South Africa's role in the G20 right before it gets ready to host the global summit, in Nigeria's case, he went even further. He renewed that threat to go, in his words, guns a-blazing. Now, if the government continues to allow the killing of Christians, quote unquote, he warned America would, again quoting, wipe out Islamic terrorists in Nigeria. Listen to the statement for yourself.
The Nigerian government continues to allow the killing of Christians. The USA will immediately stop all aid and assistance to Nigeria. We're going to do things to Nigeria that Nigeria is not going to be happy about and may very well go into that now disgraced country, guns a-blazing, to completely wipe out the Islamic terrorists who are committing these horrible, horrible atrocities.
Just last week, remember, Trump put Nigeria back on America's list of religious freedom violators. And then on November 1, he said he had asked the Pentagon to prepare for possible fast military action if Nigeria fails to act. Washington's move has strained diplomatic ties. Nigeria's government has rejected the U.S. claims outright, calling them misinformation and faulty data, quote unquote. The information minister, meanwhile, has also pushed back, saying terrorism in Nigeria affects both Christians and Muslims, and that the government is fighting extremism through military action, regional cooperation and dialogue.
The government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is well apprised of the level of anxiety created by the designation of our country as the country of particular concern, or CPC, by the U.S. government, and the threats of military action by the President of the United States, following a wrong perception and misrepresentation of the security challenges in our country.
So where does Nigeria really fit into Trump's broader agenda in a way, especially as his own government remains shut down for 36 days and counting? For months, American politicians and campaigners have alleged that Islamist militants are systematically targeting Christians in Nigeria. But much of the data used to support that claim is difficult to verify, reportedly. In the month of September, US TV host described it as a quote-unquote genocide, claiming Boko Haram had killed over 100,000 people since 2009 and burned 18,000 churches. Nigeria called that a gross misrepresentation of reality. Officials admit there is deadly violence, but insist that terrorists attack everyone, Christians, Muslims, and those of no faith. Independent analysts agree reportedly that most victims of jihadist attacks are Muslims and not Christians. A security expert has said while Christians have been attacked as part of a broader terror strategy, it's not possible to justify claims that they are deliberately being targeted. Nigeria, after all, is battling multiple security crises, from jihadist insurgencies in the north to criminal networks in the west, reportedly, central regions, each with different causes. Nigeria's 220 million people are roughly evenly split between Christians and Muslims, with Muslims dominant in the north, where most attacks occur reportedly. Nigeria's government has struggled to contain these groups, from Boko Haram, infamous for the Chibok girls' kidnapping, to Islamic State West Africa province. But verifying the death toll has been rather tricky. Some organizations claim over 100,000 Christians have been killed since 2009. Others, like the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, say 53,000 civilians, both Christians and Muslims, have died in political violence since the year 2009. The group adds that most attacks were not religiously motivated. The charity Open Doors, which tracks persecution of Christians, has said 3,100 Christians and 2,300 Muslims were killed in Nigeria last year alone. So the picture is complex. The numbers don't quite match in some cases, which also raises a big question. Can potential U.S. military action in Nigeria really be justified on these grounds, especially since Donald Trump is not just talking about Nigeria, he is also taking shots at South Africa, for example, the continent's biggest economy. And the U.S. president has said South Africa should not even be in the grouping anymore, arguing, quoting, what's happened there is bad. South Africa, remember, is set to host the G20 summit on November 22 to 23. But Trump says he will not attend, sending Vice President J.D. Vance instead. Remember, Trump has previously pushed the false claim of a genocide against white farmers, quote unquote, in South Africa, even offering them refugee status in the U.S. His latest remarks coming while discussing Cuba and Venezuela, suggesting he may have confused South Africa with South America, perhaps. That's also been talked about. So as Trump's rhetoric sharpens and as Washington revives old claims, one cannot help but ask all over again, is the U.S. gearing up for a whole new front, this time in Africa?